now for more on this. Mr. May, I mean, Army sergeants, I imagine, are generally not cavalier about making these statements. This seems like quite the thing to say.
Well, there are serious questions about Sergeant Bergdahl, about his service in Afghanistan, about his time in captivity, his relationship with his captors. More questions seem to be posed or need to be posed every day, and the administration so far has not had good answers.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that they knew a lot of this information and they're planning something else? Who knows what the reason is? Or do you think that this blindsided them too?
It's hard to necessarily know motives, but it's very hard to believe that they were blindsided. There was a Pentagon report in 2010 that made it very clear that Bergdahl at least had walked off his post, walked away, and that means he went AWOL or he deserted. That was in 2009. There was such a report. Now, that raises another question. If there was a suspicion that he had deserted, or at least he had walked away, which he was not authorized to do, and had done so of his own volition, and that's what led to his capture, why was he promoted, which he was, while in captivity, from a private to a sergeant? That's not clear. And if we knew this, and we did, again, the Pentagon did, why is it that Susan Rice, the ambassador to the United Nations, went on the Sunday programs and said that Sergeant Bergdahl served with honor and distinction? She also said he had been captured on the battlefield. It's a very loose definition of battlefield. If he walked away from his unit, walked into a village, the Taliban heard there was some crazy American running around, came in and took him hostage or took him prisoner, as you will.
President Obama said, look, the first thing we want to have happen is for him to get well, for him to be reunited with his family, almost as if to push aside questions of whether there'll be any probing, whether there'll be a court-martial. How do you expect this will unfold, at least from the official administrative side?
Well, I think the Pentagon is planning, I think they have made that clear, to do a fairly thorough investigation. At least I hope that's the case, and I think they have suggested that's the case as soon as he's well enough to begin to answer some questions. I would be surprised, not shocked, if the administration were in some way to prevent that investigation from taking place. I think from what we're seeing in the polls, most Americans want there to be a thorough investigation. They'd like to know what actually happened here. They'd like to know whether, and I'm not saying this is the case, but it's a possibility, whether we have gotten back somebody who deserted in exchange for 5 senior Taliban commanders. That would be a very, very bad deal. Now, once you know the truth, then you can make the decision whether to prosecute, and whether or not, after you prosecute, whether or not to punish or incarcerate or something like that. None of that has to be the case. Maybe he suffered enough while he was in captivity, but there's also the possibility, you've heard that he didn't suffer so much in captivity, both because they were going to trade him and maybe because he was collaborating. Was he doing so under duress or of his own volition? Again, these are all questions that we don't know, but I think we do need to press for the answers, and I'm hoping that the media, the mainstream media in the U.S., in this case, will push for those questions, rather than say, as has been the case in some instances, maybe we don't need to know, maybe all the questions have been answered, let's move along to the next story.
There's just so many jaw-dropping details. The fact that he mailed some of his personal effects home to his parents a couple of weeks before he did his deserting, as questions about his father's allegiances or interests. I mean, and more coming out. It's just shocking. What strikes you as sort of the most bizarre that we've seen? Is this as bizarre as it's going to get, or do you think there's more?
I'd like to think this is as bizarre as we're going to get, but usually when I make such a prediction, I'm wrong. I think it was very strange of the president to invite the parents to the Rose Garden for what amounted to a victory lap or a celebration. It would have made a lot more sense for him to say, look, we had 1 soldier left in Afghanistan. Circumstances of his combat experience are not clear. We want to get him back no matter what, and we'll find out everything else afterwards. And just leave it at that, not embrace the parents who, as you say, seem a bit strange and said strange things and wonder about, and we have to question what they're up to. Just do that. And for Susan Rice to simply say, we're not going to get into these questions now about whether he served with distinction and honor or not. We're just getting him home. It's also, there are a lot of Democrats in Congress are upset that they were not consulted on this. Back a year ago, the White House spokesman Jay Carney said that there would be consultation with Congress over any such prisoner exchange. That was not done. Why not was that not done? Well, you can just keep going on and on about the questions this raised. We have policies of not negotiating with terrorists. Those policies obviously were not fulfilled here? Does that set a precedent? And then we don't really know the circumstances of the Taliban commanders in Qatar. There's a memorandum of understanding. I don't think any member of Congress has seen it. I know the media have not seen it. What is in it? Can they can't go back to Afghanistan for a year, so it says. Can they fundraise for al-Qaeda freely? That's a good place to do it, Qatar. Can they plan terrorist attacks from there in freedom without any difficulty? That's probably a good place to do that as well. So, as you say, there are so many questions. So much of this is bizarre, and we can't say we've gotten to the end of the road on it.
Mr. May, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I saw just earlier today, I think it was an MSNBC contributor saying the GOP is going to Benghazi this. I think what they're trying to say is Benghazi was a non-story, and this is a non-story, and now people are torquing the details. It's just a crazy right-wing conspiracy. We're going to keep on this, and we're up here in Canada. I hope you folks keep on this, and I look forward to hearing more from you. Thanks very much for joining us.